Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is more of a follow-up on a previous video that I did when I installed Dakota Digital gauges into the 68 Mustang known as Jade. So if you haven't seen that video, it's back in the playlist. I have well over 100 videos, maybe 150 videos on this car. And I suggest if you're interested in getting the Dakota Digital gauges, that you can go back and look at that video and maybe get some ideas as to what the install involves. Now, let me tell you, I put those gauges in, and I'm not a fan of electronics. I can do electrical stuff, but I always get frustrated thinking there's something wrong. Like, I've put in brand new components before, and they just didn't work. And here I am troubleshooting all this stuff and realizing it's nothing I did, it's actually the component. I've never dealt with Dakota Digital gauges before. So I put everything in and I just kind of left it at that. I didn't mess with really much of anything. I know that when I started the car, the gauges did their sweep motion like they're supposed to, and I know that the temperature climbed and different things, parameters that are part of the system, they all seem to operate. So recently I went through the steps of programming the speedometer, because the speedometer doesn't know your gear ratio, it doesn't know your tire size, it doesn't know any of that stuff. And there's a sequence to it in this pamphlet or this book. And basically you program it. You set it up to where you're going to drive the car for 1 mile. You start the program, you drive it 1 mile. At the 1 mile mark you hit the switch, and now you've programmed the speedometer to recognize how far 1 mile is, and from there now you have a speedometer. Okay. So I took care of that because that's something I didn't get done. I got it taken care of. The next thing on the list was my fuel sending unit, or my fuel gauge. Again, I didn't really look into it that much. I was under the assumption that because I bought a gauge cluster for a Ford Mustang, that it would have been calibrated to take or register as a Ford sensor. Dakota's not going to do that because basically they build their systems to where you have to calibrate it to your car, which makes perfect sense. So I went through the book, and I can just tell you, there's a bunch of information in here. When all else fails, read the book. So in that sense, there was some information about the fuel setup that you had to program it to register what type of vehicle or what kind of sending unit you had. So just to give you an example, if you look at this is the code that they have built into the system, okay? And somewhere in the middle there, it says Ford, and it says earlier to 1980. So once I put in that code, which in this case, earlier to late 80s was F10, okay? You had to go through the sequence and punch up F10. As soon as I did that, I had a fuel gauge, and it registered what was in the tank. So I was excited. I said, great, I got that figured out. And it's really not that complicated. However, today, or should I say recently, I took the car for a drive and went about 10 miles, and the temperature gauge, it was getting very, very hot. At least that's what the gauge was telling me. So I started to panic, and I put the windows down because I had the AC on, put the windows down, turned the heater on, and was drawing heat into the car out of the engine bay, out of the cooling system. And I thought, man, something's just not right, because I have this aluminum radiator, dual electric fans, and it's working. Everything should be doing its job, but it's something else. So again, go back to the book, and I'm sorry if I'm dragging this out, but I'm trying to explain why it's important to go to this book. So Dakota Digital only offers one temperature sensor. For this system, it is SEN-04-5, and it reads 100 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 1/8 inch NPT threads. You can use bushings to adapt the sensor to various locations. You will select DDF to read in Fahrenheit, or select DDC to read in Celsius. So that's a cool option, but it only reads in those numbers on the digital function, I guess, because the sweep meter isn't going to change. It doesn't change the numbers in the background. So let me show you part of that process and what it takes to look at this and figure out what's going on. Okay, so I get in the car, and you can see the gauges. Hopefully you can see there's your oil pressure, reads in standard numbers. There is your water temperature. I don't know if you can see that very well. It reads in increments. It starts out at 0, goes, the first number you read is 140, then it's 180, then it's 220, and then you're really in serious trouble. Over here, your fuel. Again, I know I'm blocking this, getting a reflection on it. Reads in standard, quarter, half, three-quarter, full. Okay, the way this system works, you have to program all these gauges. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to try to set my camera where I can maybe get some. Okay, so I kind of have my camera set where you can see there's a switch right here. This is the double-sided rocker switch that they provide. You have to press that to 1, or the first side, let's say to the left, hold that down and turn the key on in order to activate the system. So I'm going to turn the key on. Okay. So when you do that, it brings you up to this menu. And I'm trying not to get too much reflection on here. But it says specifically setup. I don't know if you can read that, but it says setup. And over here it says setup speed. Okay. So now you can press that 1 button down there to the left, and it changes what it reads. So there it says setup tack, setup volt, setup water, setup oil, setup fuel. And then it goes to lighting and BIM. I'm not sure what that means exactly. And displays, info, set odometer, speed. Okay, and I hope you can see that. So I'm going to go to, there's voltage and water. Okay, so now at this point, what the instructions say to do is to, and I'm going to, hopefully I can get this on here. Hold down on that button and it'll give you some parameters. So I'm going to hold that down and it's going to come up and say sender. I click again. It says warning. So you can set your warning. Like if you want to set it at 220, it'll actually flash some lights at you and tell you have a problem. Test. Now this is where I'm going to show you something that I find really interesting. So I'm going to hold down on that button to activate the test. So hold down and it's going to read ohms. So this is a pretty cool setup. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, it reads 836 ohms. Well, if we go to the book and we start looking at what the instructions say here. So you've got these temperature sensor setup, temperature warning setup, and come down here, it says temperature sensor test. Well, what does it say right there? 100 degrees Fahrenheit will read 500 ohms. 200 degrees, 75 ohms. 300 degrees, 19 ohms. Well, I'm reading 836 ohms right now, and the car is cold. The temperature out here in the shop is probably 80, I don't know, 80 degrees. So there's no way that should be reading 836 ohms. All right, let me shut this key off for a second. All right, to show you, I've got my laser thermometer. I'm going to turn that on. And just to show you, there is a temperature on that hose right there of 76 degrees. When I measured the temperature previously, after I'd driven the car and it was showing hot, I got a temperature right there of 174 degrees. That was the highest temperature that I could find on the car. I checked the water neck, and there it says 76. Of course, it's not been running. I'm just showing you the parameters here. There was 76 again, and I checked the lower hose, and I remember it was like 140 or something. So the temperature that I'm getting per this thermometer was completely different than what it was reading on the gauge. It was reading around 210. Now that I look at it and I recognize, hey, there's a problem, what do you do? So what I did, you know, read the book, right? So I went to the back of the book, and it tells you troubleshooting. There we go, troubleshooting guide. So it gives you various things, you know, system does not turn on, system does not turn on in LED flashes, the TAC will not show a reading, various things like that. The TAC reading is incorrect, speedometer will not show a reading. So come down here, and where did I find that one? Let me see, maybe it's on the next page. Okay. The oil or water reading is incorrect. The engine block may not be grounded to the chassis, frame, or body properly. Use heavy ground cables from the battery to the engine block. Make sure both ends of the cable have clean metal-to-metal connections. Use a braided ground strap to ground the engine block to the chassis. Use a large braided ground strap to ground the engine block to the body or firewall. Well, now that I look at it and I start thinking about this, I thought I had put a ground strap on. I really did, but apparently I may not have. So I'm looking it over and sure enough, I don't have a ground strap on it. So I'm going to come up with a ground strap of some sort. I don't know that I can use the heavy braided one because I don't have one of those on hand. So I may come up with something that I can just go from the back of the cylinder head or even the intake manifold and probably ground to what would be a mount bolt, I believe, for the AC system. So let's see if that does anything. All right, I'm going to give this a shot. This is just a simple ground strap, like $8 from Advanced Auto Parts. So I'll put this in place and we'll check the ohms again and see what it reads. All right, let's see what happens. I'm currently in setup mode. So I'm going to cycle through, go back to water, hold the button down, select sender, warning, and test. So we're going to hold that down. Okay, so it looks like I'm getting a reading of 836 to 881, which is not good. So apparently there's something else wrong. Let me see if I can go. Okay, so the sender is correct, the DDF. You know, I'm going to do a little troubleshooting, and we'll see if we can't fix this. Okay, I'm doing a test right now. The ground information didn't seem to change. The ohm resistance didn't seem to change. And I'm monitoring the temperature. So we're showing I don't know what that would be. There's 180, split that between 140 is 160, so I'm guessing maybe the wider mark between 140 and 0 would be 120. So we're pushing 140-ish about right now. So I'm going to take my laser pointer only showing 114, 115 at that turn. Go to the thermostat area. .22 at the turn. So it's still not right. It's still not reading right. Because there it's showing 150. And you can see the fuel gauge is working. According to this, we should be coming up on 160 here in just a second. That's pretty close to 160. So it's about 30 degrees off. I mean, there's 130 in the hose. The lower hose is only at 80 degrees. So nothing's moving yet. I mean, it's moving water around, but it's not moving through the radiator much. So something is still not right. That's 170-ish. So I'm not sure what's going on. I can't see why that would be so far off. If I remember right, even the thermostat, the relays were tripped to 160, I think. So something's not right. Okay, the fans are on. There's my temperature, 155. I had a 156 there a second ago. That's the highest temperature I can get just about anywhere on this. Lower hose, 128, 129, 130, somewhere in that range. If I go to the car gauge, ish. So somehow this is reading 30 degrees different. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I'll just open this up to the forum and look for suggestions of what I'm doing wrong, but I feel like I've done what I need to do, but something is definitely not reading correctly. Okay, so maybe I didn't get to the end result. Maybe I didn't find the answer that I'm looking for. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. So if you have had an experience with one of these and you can give me some suggestions, that would be great. I added the ground strap, blocked to firewall. I even went so far as to take the strap loose from the firewall hook up the ohm meter between the firewall post and the strap. It zeroed out, so I know that worked. I went the other way from the firewall to where the block was. I took the bolt off, grounded it, zeroed out, so it's getting ground, at least through the firewall and the block. I took the Teflon tape off of the sensor, so that shouldn't be a problem. And really, I don't think it was a problem anyway, because once you crank that in, it kind of peels the tape off. So I don't think that was it either. So maybe you have a suggestion. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognize that it's going to be 30 degrees off and drive it the way it is. But I'd rather have the gauge working. So any input would be fantastic. Let me know. Open to suggestions, ideas. And that'll be it for this video. So thanks for watching. I don't think I got you any good information, but I may have pointed out some things that maybe you didn't know before or something along those lines. So maybe you got some benefit out of it. But anyway, if you have any advice, let me know. And until next time, take care of yourselves. See you.